Well, we are joined now by Afro-World reporter Nhlanhla Jele live in studio, as well as political analyst Professor Sipho Siepe. We also have over the phone line COSATU President Dumo Dlamini. A very good evening to all of you. Let me start with you, Mr. Dlamini. Good evening to you and thank you for joining us here on Afro Prime. Talk to us about this unity that President Ramaphosa kept on mentioning. What exactly is this importance in the unity of the tripartite alliance?
Thank you very much, and good evening to yourself and the viewers of Afro View. Unity of the alliance and the unity of the ANC and each component of the alliance is the cornerstone of a successful organization that is capable of dealing with the issues our country is facing. The alliance led by the ANC has a task of leading society, and for it to be able to achieve that task, that unity is very, very critical, which is why we always have welcomed the message that has been emerging from the president of the ANC and the ANC at large, that we need to sit down, thresh out those issues that have concerned us. One of those, which has been the demand of both COSATU and the SACP, the reconfiguration of the alliance, so that it is able to operate in a manner that involves the alliance partners in certain decision-making, which guide the policy direction of our country. So, without that unity, definitely we shall not be able to lead society to the direction that society expects.
Mm-hmm. Now just coming to studio, please stay with us, Mr. Dlamini, on the phone line as we come to studio. Professor, what is the relevance of the alliance in your view?
Well, I think the alliance has always stated that it has a mandate and a mission, and the mission is historical, that of making sure that there's liberation of black people in general and Africans in particular. It is that alliance that has led us to what you call political freedom, the breakthrough of 1994. The challenge that it faces now is how do you move from political freedom to economic freedom. This is why you've had other organizations like the PLF, the EFF, putting the issue of economy in the center. The ANC, in its wisdom, at the NASREC, also came up with the far-reaching resolutions that speak to the need for the implementation of radical economic transformation policies in government. So there is a very clear message. Mm-hmm. But the ANC does not enter that with a party that is united. Hence, the issue of unity has always been important. Actually, what is said now is not new. Every president of the ANC has always spoken about unity. But the question is, what type of unity? A unity to do what and in what direction has been the issue. Remember, during Thabo Mbeki's reign, there was a concern that the ANC has been captured by business. And under Jacob Zuma, there was a sense that there was unity between the executive of the ANC and the ANC with the workers, until you started having these disagreements that were taking place among the alliance, some of them taking more personal nature than ideological postures. So that is the issue that the president of the ANC is now talking about. Mm-hmm. But there are people who are also beginning to think that this ANC is an ANC that is going to be captured, already captured by big business. And it's just interesting that when Cyril Ramaphosa was speaking about the mining bosses who were looking at profit, it is interesting that the very same NUM is a NUM that led to the formation of AMCU, which accuses it of having had people who were siding with the mining bosses. And the very same president was saying that he's the one who is being accused. And even he himself knows that he still has to atone for whatever happened in Marikana, where he has not been. He's been everywhere except Marikana. So what it does, it creates a question among the workers. So when you talk about unity, and we don't see our people prioritized, and we don't even see those who have lost their lives prioritized in terms of meeting the president, then the people from NUM should actually be raising those issues to him, say there is a need for a corrective behavior on the side of the leadership. But he's also talking about unity as a leader of the ANC, about the ANC itself that is not united. Every week we hear members of the ANC taking the ANC to court. So when you preach that unity, people could actually say maybe you must also make sure that that is expressed also in your own organization. So what Stumo was also saying is that there's also this challenge that they must address of the reorganization and around the alliance, because there was a particular understanding, but with postures that we see, there is a sense that the relationship must also be redefined.
So charity should actually begin at home. Now, just coming to you now, you were on the ground covering the story at the NUM Congress. Just talk to us about some of the highlights of the things that were discussed at the Congress.
Indeed, Gil, as Prof and Stumo are saying, unity. That is what President Ramaphosa said when he took to the podium this afternoon. Basically just saying to the people who are there, the delegates, the members of the union, that they need to stay united and move forward. I mean, he started briefly with the history of where NUM comes from and where it started. And he put it to them that they need to remember where they come from, where they are now, and where they're going, just so they can keep on the numbers that they had back in the past. Remember when NUM started, it had a lot of members, in like 20,000 members in a short space of time. But he also highlighted the fact that a lot of its members actually left and went to other unions who came into NUM and formed their own other parties. So there is some of the highlights that he spoke about, and also mine safety of the miners. What do they do when they get to the mines? He also mentioned and told them that they have the right to say no to unsafe working conditions. I mean, he spoke also about the recent deaths that we have been seeing in the mines recently. He also said that they have a right to say no to working in unsafe conditions. And as Prof just said just now, that unity is something that also goes back to the ANC. He also mentioned that they need to stay united as they're moving forward to the 2019 elections, just to make sure that they come out victorious in the elections. They need to form a united front, even in its lowest forms, and move on together into the 2019 general elections.
Now, just coming back to you, Mr. Dlamini, what can we attribute the loss of membership that NUM has suffered to?
Yes, the report of the General Secretary of the National Union of the Mine Workers attributes this loss to a number of factors. High amongst them are the retrenchments that have been happening in the different sectors they operate, in particular the mining sector that has seen a huge loss of jobs affecting the union itself. But the report also does hinge on the point that COSATU has made, and that service to members is very, very critical. And workers of today are not going to just loyally and hold on to historical loyalty to the union. They want service and they want to see it. If that is not forthcoming, they have choices to go to other unions. The third one being the intimidation and the threats of death and the deaths that have occurred, particularly in the Rustenburg area, the Platinum Belt, where workers were killed to threaten others to join a particular union and leave the National Union of the Mining Workers. So people would rather say, let's choose to leave, because if we continue in this union that we love so much, we are being killed, which is a fact, and which is very, very abnormal. So there will be a range of factors beyond the point that there is generally an apathy or a decline of interest by workers, in particular the young ones, to join unions, which has instructed all of us to go out on a campaign to encourage and recruit and educate and ensure that people have the interest in the unions, because there is nothing that will save a worker from the workplace if they don't have a union.
And just coming back to studio, Professor, what do you think is the root cause of this tendency towards factionalism?
Well, I mean, this is just a straightforward issue. with democracy, you have what you call democratic dividend. One of those for the ANC is the ANC assuming state power. And within state power, there are people who are delegated or deployed in certain positions. And those positions comes with certain material benefits. So you see people who used to be what people call my brother's keeper, turning on each other, not towards each other for assistance. So it has become a dog-eat-dog phenomenon. So that also leads to a situation where certain people become members of other members. So what we see now is something that started many years ago, but we have seen when the ANC was going through its elective conference, you saw those tendencies expressing themselves. So you don't expect that overnight, once we have a new person, things will disappear. But also we've seen a certain element of triumphalism within the ANC, where the victors have gone out of their way to try to punish those that were opposed to them. So this is not going to be no amount of preaching unity without acting on it and building it is going to turn the fortunes of the ANC around. But what is also interesting is the emphasis that the ANC is speaking about. It's around 2019. As I said earlier, that the mission of the ANC has always been the liberation of black people in general and Africans in particular. But now it appears that the mission of the ANC has been about staying in power. You'd have expected the president of the ANC and the president of the country to talk about are the material conditions of workers. That what does it mean? What does the new dawn mean for workers? What does the new dawn mean when you have VAT increases that the COSATU is opposed to? What does it mean when that is also brought together with a fuel increase? And we've seen in the last 2 weeks the plummeting of what they call business confidence. What does it mean for workers? Those are issues that we should start talking about, issues that are pertinent to the country, to the liberation of black people in general and Africans in particular. This notion of, as Mr. Mojamini put it, the notion of appealing to history as if history is going to solve our problem is the laziest of a political analysis and of a political direction. What do we need and what people want is that how are you going to address the issues of poverty? The previous president and the previous dispensation, of which Ramaphosa was part of, had a clear 9-point plan. You must tell people what happened to that 9-point plan. Now we have load shedding. Why are we having load shedding? You have a debate around IPPs by the workers and the unions. Those are issues that should be on the table, critical issues, not this waffling around the past, around the nice huggings that the allies might have been used to. There are critical issues that are on the table, and those are the issues that, if they're not addressed, they are going to remind the ANC and the ANC alliance that you do not vote or own the vote of black people. Black people will start voting for other parties.
Nhlanhla, having attended the Congress, do you think that the voting and election process for the new NUM leadership will be one that's democratic and not influenced by vote buying?
Indeed. As we all know, there are infightings in between the party, and we saw that quite clearly this afternoon. I mean, before the Congress actually started, there were actually two groups singing. So one can only hope that it will be democratic and all the votes are going to be counted and properly so, and nothing is going to go wrong. I mean, when the president was addressing some of the issues, some people would actually scream from the back, like things that they're not happy with whatever he's saying. So one can only hope that tonight's voting session goes according to plan. And as Prof is saying right now, that this thing of talking about the history and not actually addressing some of the issues that these miners are faced with currently. I mean, safety for one. Cabinet Minister Mvula Mkwenyane actually spoke about it yesterday when she came back with the cabinet meetings briefing yesterday, when she told media that they spoke about safety of the miners and they're encouraging mining bosses to actually take safety as a priority. But those are some of the things that need to be addressed. Also, load shedding. We need to understand as to why this is happening. We also need to know what is going to happen to miners as they continue working. I mean, President Ramaphosa did mention that a lot of retrenchments are happening currently in the mining sector, but he also calls it a sunshine sector. He says that a lot of opportunities still arise, but people on the ground still also want to know why these retrenchments are happening and what is going to be done to solve these issues. I mean, a lot of people did leave NUM and went to other unions, like AMCU, for instance. So we need to know as to why this is happening. I mean, Dr. did mention some of the reasons, and he said retrenchments, but we need to get to a point, or they need to get to a point as to where they understand as to why this is happening. President Ramaphosa put it back to them and said they need to analyze as to why this is happening and how they can get back some of their members. So I hope, and I'm sure everybody else, even the people who are there, are hoping that the votes are going to be counted properly and no corruption is going to take place.
Well, we'll get to that update once the voting process has actually been concluded. But just, Mr. Dlamini, before I let you go, President Ramaphosa mentioned something that the miners should actually be benefiting from the minerals that they are mining from underground. Do you think that this is something that is a practical and that can be achieved in the near future?
Indeed, that's why we are looking forward to the conclusion on the discussion around the mining charter, because that's where you may also begin to see, if it is correctly done, workers beginning to see benefit of their labor. To mine and to ensure that this diamond or these minerals are taken out from underground, beneficiated here in South Africa, thus creating more jobs and getting more people working, but also at the same time as share dividends that should go to the workers in terms of what should go to them. I hear they are saying 5% to the workers, or 8%, those discussions are very, very critical, because there is no other important element in the production in this country of these mineral resources without the workers. You can bring the robots and other things, but you will still need these workers to ensure that the value chain is delivering on what you want to see. Lastly, I want to mention, as Prof was saying there, COSATU expects that the rhetoric around the new dawn should be properly unpacked and content be put into it, so that we see true elements of the radical economic transformation in this country. And therefore, we are not going to keep quiet about that matter, even when we meet with the ANC to begin this process. Because, by the way, with the first meeting that we are going to have in 2018 after NASREC in December, it's only going to be on the 8th and 9th of July. And we're very unhappy about that, but at least there's now a date for the Political Council. We are looking forward to it.
Well, thank you very much to you, COSATU President Duma Dlamini, for joining us on the phone line. Just coming to studio, Professor, your closing comments.
Well, I think the National Union of Mine Workers is in a bind. In a bind because the president used to be its Secretary General at first. Secondly, it's also because they supported him. Now they are beginning to see that the life of workers does not seem to be experiencing a new dawn, but they are not able to raise those issues. If you take, for instance, the mining charter that we have, that mining charter was withdrawn after there was a discussion and a grumbling by business people. So you see the influence that the business has over the new direction of the ANC. You take the issue of land expropriation without compensation that came as a policy of the ANC or a resolution of the ANC. It had to take the EFF to put it on the table. You have the position by COSATU that talks about the nationalization of the Reserve Bank, which is also something that also emerged from the ANC resolution. And you don't see this leadership of the ANC being the leader or championing that. Instead, you'll find parties that are not members of the ANC saying, we agree with the ANC for the first time. So the National Union of Mine Workers must actually be asking different questions. But because it has chosen and supported a particular person, it finds itself not raising those critical issues that will be raised by other unions. And for as long as it behaves like that, where we could say it is not being politically and economically honest, then the people are going to start moving to other unions.
Well, Nhlanhla, in 1 minute, your closing comments.
What I can say is the issue of unity. Let's just hope as the union remains united, mining bosses also hear their cries and also deal with the issue of safety. I mean, we've had a lot of people dying in the mines of late. So let's just hope moving forward that number of people who are dying in the mines is going to be reduced and everything is going to be put in place, or processes and procedures are going to be put in place to ensure that we limit the number of people who die. I mean, they also need to educate the miners about their rights as to what they can do and what they cannot do, just to ensure that we preserve the life that we have.
Well, thank you very much to our esteemed panelists. It is time now for a short break, but do stay tuned to Afro Worldview for more news and updates.